Provoke, new art on stage.
Welcome to the 22nd episode of The Art of Assembly, this time with the title Provoke Me If You Can, The Crisis of Artistic Disturbances. This episode is based on a live event at Playground Munich on February 8, 2023. And The Art of Assembly is a nomadic series of lectures and conversations reflecting and speculating on the potential of gatherings in art, activism, and politics. If you missed it so far, you might want to check out our archive with many videos and podcasts at art-of-assembly.net. For this episode, I'm very happy to be joined by the artists Núria Güell and Renzo Martens. My name is Florian Malzacher. I'm a curator and writer and host of the series, which is a collaboration with Brut Vienna and today also with Anna Koniecki, Playground Munich. Thanks so much for inviting us.
And as you all know, provocations have been for a long time like really in the toolbox of art and activism, one of the things that most people speak about when they remember certain works and so on. So it was part of what was done in activism. And somehow it seems that in a time where many already feel permanently snubbed, artistic provocation seems often stale and redundant on one hand, and on the other hand, the demand for repair, care, and healing, which we have also been talking about in the series quite a bit, dominates often the artistic discourse. So affirmation instead of critique has, in some parts, become a guiding principle within the arts. And on the other hand, when climate activists, most famously, of course, the last generation, which will not be here tonight, we tried to convince somebody to come, when climate activists glue themselves to highways or oil paintings, there's the scandal and the provocation works, and people are really upset through very broad. I mean, I think it's quite smart to take highways and artworks because you cover a large segment of society. So it still seems to function in certain areas. And also not to forget that meanwhile the political far right blatantly focuses on lowering inhibition thresholds. So continuous taboo-breaking on the right pushes the boundaries of what is, say, and doable in the last years. So also that is, I guess, related to these topics. So in the time where confrontational practices are generally questioned, we want to investigate a little bit how the concept of provocation has shifted in recent years. And for this, I guess we have with Núria Güell and Renzo Martens perfect guests, so I'm very happy that you made it here. And I also will not speak much further, but begin with introducing Núria, who will speak first, and then Renzo will have an input, and after this we have a conversation, and you can also be provoked or provoke us or ask questions or whatever. Núria Güell's artistic practice continuously challenges moral and legal conventions when, for example, she offers herself as a bride to a random Cuban man, not completely random, he had to write a love letter, but besides this random Cuban man who wants to get a Spanish passport, or when in reverse she tries to become stateless herself. And your practice is a practice of confrontation, often involving bureaucratic and legal procedures. And Núria clearly doesn't understand artistic practice as a mere cultural one, but as one that also has to be useful, following a path that we also already discussed in the series together with Tanya Bugera, for example, which you also collaborated with in Cuba in the past. So I would say just take over, and I'm curious for your input.
Hello. Thanks for the invitation, Florian. And I will start. Okay, so the title of my conference is When Morality Becomes Immoral. Sexually provoke male police officers with macho attitudes to turn them into object of a study. Offer myself in marriage to the Cuban boy who wrote me the most beautiful love letter in the world. In exchange, he had to be at my disposal for whatever I asked to him until he obtained the Spanish nationality, and we will divorce. Maintain a legal confrontation with the Spanish state to renounce to my nationality requesting a stateless status. Use religious paintings, like all of that, in order that ex-pimps explain the abuses they inflicted on the girls or women they traffic with. Hire 4 ex-prisoners who had served sentence for our death as a security force of my solo show during 6 months. Use my status as a parishioner to record on hidden camera the moral reflections of several parish priests and a nun in relation to my work. Seeing the ideological coincidences with the artistic institutions I work with, I decided to pay contributions to social security as a nun instead of as an artist. This action allowed me to benefit from the tax exceptions enjoyed by the Catholic Church in Spain. I could go on with the list of artistic projects in which I have used the resource of provocation, but as we have little time, I prefer to focus my presentation on sharing some reflections on the subject that concerns us. Florian has posed the problem well when, in his introductory text, he says that in a time when many already feel permanently snubbed, artistic provocations often seem stale and redundant. The demand for repair, care, and healing dominates artistic discourse. Yes, we can say that many contemporary subjects feel offended or attacked relatively frequently. And perhaps for that reason, museums and art centers seem to have become missionaries, proclaiming the goodness of care, of love, of diversity, of repair, and inclusion. Can we say that contemporary art has become Christianized? It seems to communicate. We are all brothers and sisters, children of the same omnipotent God. Call him Jesus, Gaia, Pachamama, or whatever you like. And we must love each other in our diversity. But what kind of diversity is a diversity that does not differ? Doesn't it seem like a very homogenizing diversity? Well, these questions make my head explode. And yes, Florian has spotted a real conflict. Where is the provocation nowadays? I will try to answer this question in 4 points and 1 conclusion. So the first point, provocation as a semantic resource versus provocation as an end in itself. Through my life and apart from my artistic practice, I have collaborated with various activist collectives. As a result of this experience, I think it is important to distinguish provocation as a resource from provocation as an end in itself. In activism, provocation is key. It's about attracting the attention of the public opinion. And what you are looking for is that concrete effect. That's what I would call provocation as an end in itself. For example, staining a painting is a direct provocation. It draws attention, but the action has no direct relation to the object of the protest, that is, inaction in the face of climate change. The action has no other meaning than to draw attention. Once the gaze is drawn to the provocation action, in that moment is when the message is shown, no? Save the planet, freedom for the political prisoners, get your money out of the banks that finance armaments, or whatever. So provocation as an end has to be clear as an order, and it is a show of force, a challenge. Either you do what I ask you to do, or you will have to take the consequences of your refusal. What does that imply? that the meaning of the provocation has to be as close as possible. It cannot lead to confusion. If, instead of throwing paint cans, they were to dance in front of the artworks, the provocation would not be effective because the meaning would be too open. So, I think that the condition of possibility of the artwork is to keep its meanings open, not closed. So I don't practice provocation as an end in itself, because what provocation does as an end in itself is to close the meanings. When I use provocation, I use it as a semantic resource to open meanings, to show an existing conflict that disturbs me, but the meaning of that work never depends on the provocation. In short, from my point of view, if a work of art does not keep its meaning open, it loses its potency. It is deactivated and becomes part of the culture, of the cultural productions. But this would be another debate. Second point, moral precepts versus ethical position. Okay, we have already distinguished provocation as a resource from provocation as an end in itself. But bearing in mind that we are talking about artistic practice, which artistic themes seek the representation of close meanings? Question, no? Religious art? I think so. It needs close meanings. Dubs are the enemy of faith. And political or ideological propaganda are? Yes, clearly. We are the good guys, and those who oppose our story are the bad guys. Also, art that exalts some kind of value or some kind of power, from the exaltation of nature to the exaltation of love, care, human rights, freedom, or fatherland. And what do religious art, political propaganda, and art exalting values have in common? They are all moral art. It is moral art that look for close meanings, orders, not doubts or questions. In my artistic practice, I contrapose ethics to morality. And why do I contrapose ethics against morality? Because I am used to dealing with delicate conflicts that often involve other persons, other subjects, and I need to take responsibility for the whole process. And this can only be assumed by acting from my own ethics. If I were driven by moral values, I would not be able to take responsibility, because I would be obeying. No one takes responsibility from moral precepts. They have to do with good intentions approved by a certain community. Only from my point of view, only from an ethical position and not from a moral one, I can respond to the consequences that may arise during the process of my projects. 3, the artist as an agent provocator. I think that the social function of the artist consists in allowing himself to be affected by the symptoms of the times and to express them. In this way, the artist lets be seen what one does not want to see, and lets be heard what one does not want to hear easily. I consider the profession of the artist is a kind of anti-profession, which is why it is also said that the artist is a foreigner in his own country, a foreign agent who infiltrates to the social body. For me, the artist is something of a parasite, but also an antibody. The agent provocator, el agente provocador, after provoking himself, provokes the other. But the artist creates the necessary openness, the necessary distance for the other to relate to the artwork by deciding his involvement, reading, and affection. The public can feel indifference, indignation, astonishment, rejoicing, and so on. The meanings are open, and I believe that this relationship with the other, with the public, is also based on an ethical position, because it understands the other as a political subject, responsible. He or she has to take charge of his or her reading of the artwork. So there is not crypto buy. 4. The good, the truth, and it's linked to authoritarianism. I don't know how to pronounce this word, but okay. In my work, I don't use provocation to express a truth, but I use it as a way of questioning it. In this sense, it is logical that if you question a truth assumed by a community, it feels attacked or provoked, especially in these times of victimization, in which if you are not a victim of some kind of violence, you lose points. We know that in authoritarian societies, freedom of expression is at low ebb. It is subjected to censorship, self-censorship, public scorn, criminalization, cancellation, and without a minimum of freedom of expression, there can be neither provocation nor the artistic practice that I defend. In this sense, I understand artistic provocation as a balm against authoritarianism. The freedom to be able to say the king is naked and the queen is naked must be safeguarded. However, must be safeguarded, protegido. However, much may shock or offend some communities or identifications, or even society as a whole. The single thought is the greatest enemy of artistic practice. It castrates the desire to know. Authoritarian societies, in the name of good or in the name of truth, only produce propaganda. Conclusion. I think these are bad times for art, since it is difficult to find in museums artworks that generate debate, artworks that conflict the individual with himself or the community with itself. I think this is because in a society as polarized as today's, practically only artworks with close meanings are showed. Propagandistic works, because open meaning question and cause dupe, and that doesn't interest the communities, most of which are in a defensive position. Moral demands abound, and most institutions do not admit anything that goes beyond the prevailing moral discourse. They do not want problems. I consider it urgent to exercise provocation in artistic practice, and I'm convinced that institutions should promote it, especially public institutions. But not a provocation that consists of humiliating the enemy community. As I have said, a provocation that begins by questioning one's own convictions and continues with those of the community to which one belongs, in an exercise of mental hygiene. I don't understand political art as an art of a political propaganda. I understand political art as an art that conflicts, that unsettles, that questions hegemonic knowledge and convictions. At this point in the history, we know that truth and its universal pretension do not exist, and the same can be said of the good. We know that the human condition is very complex, and the moral judgments about the good or the truth, it dares to give universal answers, for all the same. Which is why I think that moral is immoral and it's base. And this is my intervention. I finish. This is the thing. Do you understand something? Yes?
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
So we will have a lot to discuss in a moment, I think. But first, let me introduce Renzo. Renzo Martens, I think it disturbed many viewers. If you saw Enjoy Poverty, maybe his video. He enjoyed many viewers with his video work for quite a while, in which he centered himself as a white man. And for example, in Enjoy Poverty, propagated the self-gentrification of Congolese plantations. But meanwhile, however, I would say his role as a performer, as well as the relationship to the protagonists, but also to the audience, has quite changed, and you will talk about it today. You founded in 2010 the Institute for Human Activities, IHA, that aims to create gentrification effects in the Congolese rainforest through the establishment of an international art center there, but you will talk about it, so I will not go into it. And, well, you have participated in biennials and exhibitions all over the world. I will not list them now. They are all in the website. Also, Núria's information is on the website. So I just, without further ado, hand over not the microphone, but the desk.
Thank you, Florian. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Anna, for the space and setting it up. I'm very happy to be part of the art of assembly. I'm interested even in the title. What is assembling? What do we assemble? On what conditions do we work together? How do we take responsibility for our own position within those assemblies, those collaborations? And indeed, as Florian said, I would like to use this lecture to talk briefly about this transition that I made. How indeed, in short, how a white artist, a white male artist, who once purposefully positioned himself at the center of violent situations, poverty, death, disaster, centered myself as a beneficiary of that violence, of those disasters, of the exploitative policies that we export all over the world. And I transitioned from that, from positioning myself at the center of it, to later another position, which is one in which I try to restitute the means of production, the production of critique, the production of art, the production of artistic critique, to the very plantations that have funded our art world and continue to fund European and American museums. Florian briefly mentioned films I made. One of them indeed is called Enjoy Poverty. It came out many years ago, 15 years ago. And the goal of that film and other films I made at the time was to exhibit, exhibit the exploitation that is present in even the most inclusive, engaged art. In my mind, there is almost always extraction, including in many of the art practices that are about assembling, about bringing other people in the front light, including many of the people that participated in your series, The Art of Assembly. I believe that the impoverished, the marginalized are more often than not cannon fodder. So this does not only go for me, it goes, I believe, for many of the practices that we know and that we love and are engaged with. Art institutions like to think that they exist outside of the circles of violence and exploitation, and it is simply not true. They are part of it, they are funded by it. So how do we assemble togetherness, care, reparation through institutions that in and of themselves are based and are continuously funded by the exploitation that it claims to repair? So I would like to start with a clip of the very first film I made 23 years ago. It plays in Chechnya. At the time, it was being invaded by the Russians. It was a breakaway republic, in some ways similar to Ukraine now. And rather than pretending that I was interested in the stories of people who were being bombed, who were being beset by violence, by war, I purposefully positioned myself at the center of the storytelling. And I used people who are victims of war to exhibit the power apparatus that not only bombs people, but that also films people who are being bombed. Let's watch the first 2 minutes of that film from 2003. It came out. It was filmed in 2000. And that's the first segment of the PowerPoint.
Kafka's checkpoint.
Я Renzo Martens из Голландии.
А кто вам разрешает?
Я хочу делать как интервью в пост.
Джип твой стоит?
Да.
Вот слушай меня сюда.
Да.
Если он сейчас сюда не подъедет, я его расстреляю. Сюда давай. Ты стой здесь.
Я не могу вернуться.
Нет, ты уже не вернешься.
Извините, если вы хотите,
Нет. Давай, дружище, поехали в Чечню. Туда.
It's a longer clip, but did it stop here? Okay, no problem. So this is the first 2 minutes of this 42-minute film, again shot in Chechnya in the year 2000. And in this film, I enter Grozny, I enter refugee camps, and I did not ask people what they felt, what their feelings were, how they felt now that they were maybe bombed, they had no food. I didn't ask the Russian soldiers why they fought the war. I didn't ask the rebels against the Russians what their goals were. I only asked them questions about me. I asked them questions how I felt, whether I was a handsome young man, how I could maybe even seduce a young woman that looked very much like my girlfriend back home in Brussels at the time. We can watch the next 2 slides. In the end, wars are fought for audiences, and audiences decide who will get arms, who will be bombed, who will get food aid. It happened then, and it happens now. It is, again, not unlike what is happening in Ukraine, or in any war that is mediatized. So I thought that the single most important position in war is the one of the spectator. Again, the spectator indirectly decides who will be bombed and who will be rescued. And so if you make abstraction of this one person called Renzo Martens, who's this me guy in the film, centering the seemingly innocent position of the Western bystander as a prism through which to look at war is still a very accurate depiction of reality, even now. I elaborated on this process or on this methodology in the film Enjoy Poverty that Florian mentioned. We can see the next slide. I set up a neon sign. This was a neon sign on plantations in war zones in Congo. The film shows that images made of poverty, images made of people who are starving on plantations, working for Western corporations, that these images are a bigger export than the other exports of a country like Congo. The export of filmed images is a bigger economy than cocoa or diamonds or gold. Again, that's not something I invented. It's just facts. We can see some other clips or images from that film. Here, the neon sign was in those crates, and we walked to the plantations. Plantations of Unilever, a big Anglo-Dutch company that funds critical art in Tate Modern, did for many years while I was making the film. We can see the next slides. Images of rebels and victims, etc. We can stop there. The film exhibited an apparatus, if you will, an apparatus that a white male artist that goes out to show how fucked up the world is, and how indeed images of exploitation are in and of themselves part of exploitation, and that impoverished and marginalized people, of course, do not benefit from their labor on plantations, but also do not benefit of critical art about themselves working on those plantations. So I made a film that deals with that. And again, if you make abstraction of this one particular person, Renzo, the me guy in the film, it in a way goes for all of us. However, the film, I did realize, I made the film, it traveled, as Florian mentioned, through many exhibitions. And I realized that making a film about showing how making critical art about poverty is not helping impoverished people, but is rather helping rich people, I realized that exhibiting that was not going to help impoverished people. It's only going to help bring more critical awareness, more interesting art to museums that are always in rich global cities and never on the plantations. And in a way, even that critical art, even my work that in a way exhibits how critical art is not working for impoverished people, that art too was further marginalizing economically impoverished people on the plantations that fund those museums. And again, I think it was a good analysis. I wonder how many people who live and work on plantations here and now, 15 years later, benefit from the decolonization of museums, the decolonization of art history. My answer is they don't, unfortunately. First of all, people on plantations are never asked. No curator ever visits the plantations that have historically funded and continue to fund our art museums. In a way, first of all, the people on plantations that work for $10, $20 per month today, first of all, their labor, their energy is robbed. Museums have been built with it. The Ludwig collection in Cologne is one example, Tate Modern is another. But then, in a strange way, the very museums that benefited from their labor are now benefiting from, quote-unquote, decolonizing their curricula, as long as not part of the care and the reparation and the decolonization cannot also happen on plantations. And so while I had critiqued the distribution of the benefits of critique and exhibited that marginalized people would have very little to gain from artistic practice, I realized that in the end, even this critique would in the end be shown in Tate Modern and other museums that reap the benefits from these very exploitative schemes that I filmed in Enjoy Poverty. And of course, those companies do that on purpose. They fund critical art on the one hand, to, on the other hand, continue their exploitative practices, but take away the limelight from it. And so I realized that in the end, the only way that my critique could be meaningful is if I could transform it into a material proposition. And the obvious thing was to relocate the apparatus, the instance of critique, the means of production of critique, the white cube, if you will, from wealthy global cities where museums are to those very plantations. So these are the plantations, exhausted, impoverished. Again, people make $10, $20 a month. This is central Congo. We can go to the next slide. We build a white cube. We can go to the next slide. People on the plantation started to make art. Here you see some slides of an exhibition in New York. It's chocolate sculptures. We can go to the next slide. They use the money they make with their art to buy back the land, to liberate the land, and plant trees, forests, medicinal plants, to get those means of productions back as well. So here's the white cube standing in the middle of land that has been recuperated through the production of critique. Critique of the people on the plantation. And these are some members of the community. Mbuku Kimpala, Irene Kanga, Siddhartha Masala, Mathieu Kassiama, Ernest Kawata, Jeremy Mabiala, and others. So bringing this white cube back to the very plantations that have funded American and European white cubes comes with some disclaimers. I don't bring anything that people did not ask for. I don't think that I do anything else than help create a level playing field. If museums can bring care in Berlin, then I believe they should also bring care to the plantations that funded the museums in Berlin. So the only thing I did was purposefully bring back the white cube. A second disclaimer is, by bringing back the white cube, I bring back somehow the white cube, but I do it in full awareness that art is and remains part of exploitative systems. And to change that, and that's what I want, to change that, it is not a question of making nicer art, more caring art, more quote-unquote decolonial art. The only thing that I believe happened is meaningful is to redistribute the means of production, land, capital, visibility, but of course simply the art apparatus to the people from whom it has been taken away, which is in this case plantations, so that they can have their fair share of healing and care and decolonization, so that they can decolonize themselves. A third disclaimer, people on plantations in Congo and in many parts elsewhere in the globe, in Malaysia, in Colombia, make $20 per month as a full-time salary for a full-time job. They don't do this labor for some crazy African dictator, whatever stories we sometimes hear. That's not the case. They produce palm oil and other commodities that we use on a daily basis for companies who are controlled in London, who are functioning and are being controlled by financial institutions in Germany. So unless something changes, unless the production apparatus of critique is displaced from European museums or American museums or museums in global cities, even in the South, to the exploited working class, mostly in the South, but not only in the South, unless we do that, it will be only companies that dominate and control the exchanges that we have with people working for us. You could say there should not be a white cube there. If there's no white cube, if there's no instance for critique, it means that Unilever will control what messages come in and go out. I think that is really what art can do. A fourth disclaimer, no curator ever, ever, ever goes to those plantations. These are people that fund the art world. Nobody seems interested in what the opinions of these people are. Again, just to say that inclusivity and diversity cannot yet be taken for granted on the plantations just because it finally arrived in the art world. It has taken a while and for me to come up with this stuff, and I did it only through exchanges with many others, and there are many limitations to it. But in this case, some means of production are back on one of those plantations. It is now owned by people on that plantation. They are now the ones producing the critique. And with that, they buy back their land and turn it into forests again. So here, critique becomes a real material proposition. It is not symbolic, it is real. I cannot really talk about how real it is because only other people can talk about it, like Mbuku or Cédar or Mathieu. And I hope you will invite them next time.
Well, thanks so much to both of you. Yeah, I guess a lot to talk about. I will also open up in a moment, but maybe start with 1, 2, 3 questions to get my own thoughts a little bit straight. I mean, I find it quite interesting. In the series, we often talk to understand a little bit what's going on in the present. We talk about what happened in the last decade, more or less. Now it's decade plus, 1, 2 years. So the decade of assemblies, but also a decade of political art becoming a thing, in a way. So, and because, Núria, you mentioned the problematics of the term truth, I mean, one thing that shows what, for me also, like the change of the discourse was, you did a project called Truth is Concrete in 2012, so almost 11, or 12 and a half, 10 and a half years ago. And the idea then was to challenge the art world that was always into ambivalence and everything is political. If you move your arm like this, it's already political. With a certain reading of Rancière that kind of like draws some political impact out of art. So our provocation was to ourselves, that we were also in the discourse, but also to the art world to say like, truth is concrete. That's the thing. And now, well, 10 years later, you say like, well, rightfully, of course, like, I mean, it was always problematic, but you say like, oh, well, truth is a problem. So it also changes. I think that it has also to do with certain waves of discourses and adjustments of discourses. And in this, the question of ambivalence, I guess, plays a role, because ambiguity, ambivalence is like one of the key terms, and you also bring it back. And at the same time, and that would be, I would say, Núria, that in your work, also in terms of your aims behind it, of your ethics, as you called it, they're not so ambivalent. It's clear that you protest against a certain idea of passports, a certain idea of nationality, and so on. That's not ambivalent in there, so the ambivalence lies somewhere else. And in your work, you kind of like, as you present it now, I mean, one can say, I think you can find also productive ambivalence in White Cube, but you kind of reduce ambivalence. You were a very ambivalent character in your films, also in speaking, like how you presented the projects. And now you have disclaimers in a way, which is the opposite of ambivalence. And you use this disclaimer to make certain things clear. So maybe you could, you all both already talked a bit about it, but maybe talk about the role of ambivalence and maybe the problems of ambivalence in your work a bit more.
I should think.
I never think. Ambivalence. Yeah. No, I still think it's ambivalent. Of course, building a white cube on a plantation can be read in many ways. And I think it's good that it's partially provocative. But I like to I'd like to propose that it's also very real and very concrete indeed. That it's about as concrete as you can get. And the analysis is very simple. We can have, in rich parts of the world, we can create endless amounts of series of talks, or now endless amounts of exhibitions about care and restitution. And it's fine, it's good, I love it. But it doesn't seem to affect people who are historically have been financing us and who are continue to finance us. So it's all a little bit superficial, unless you make it real. And I like doing that. I like making it real. And I think I started out with those ambivalent films also in an attempt to make it real. You all know the works of Martha Roster, Bringing the War Home, in which he makes these cutouts, and you have, from the 60s, no? These cutouts of nice middle-class American families juxtaposed with disasters of war in Vietnam at the time. And she later made a second series with, after 2003 with the American invasion in Iraq. So she juxtaposes, you know, nice American middle class making selfies, nice vacuum cleaners with basically the wars that finance it. And that's very ambivalent in a way, because the assumption is that Martha Rosler and her audience is against that. They are being critical about it. But we know for a fact that all the big museums that acquired her work are part and parcel themselves of that violence, and not just on a global scale, but also locally. Gentrification, you know, the Lower East Side where she started her practice became a very wealthy, sought-after, gentrified area of the world where immigrant people are being pushed out. So I'm not trying to critique Martha Rosler here. What I'm trying to say is that there is never a clear position. Everything is completely tainted. And we continuously, in Northwestern European art practices, we continuously, even if we talk about care and inclusion, we use other people as subject matter, as cannon fodder. We invite them for conferences, pay them $500 to tell us some story, and then they're flown back home. And that's the end of it. And then we can think that, oh, our art world is really about, you know, listening to all these perspectives, and there's some revolutionary potential in the room. It is not real. It is not real. So what is real? Well, real is exhibiting that it's not real. That is certainly something I try to do in Enjoy Poverty, for example. And even more real is making sure that we solve the problem. And part of solving the problem is making sure that those very same types of conferences, talks like this one, can also happen on plantations, in sweatshops, etc. If only because people would be making more money than doing the plantation work. You know, so that's very, very concrete. The chocolate sculptures that some members of the Congolese Plantation Workers Art League made, and now they're making many more things. You know, they raise money and they buy back their land that was stolen from them, and that went directly into the construction of art museums in the UK. So it's very, very concrete. Of course, it's still provocative, and it's still ambivalent, if you will. It's still productive to be provocative and ambivalent. But I hide, at least I think I hide a little bit about it behind the truth claims, but they're so real that I cannot deny that it's very, very real to build a white cube on a plantation, and that it should happen.
But one follow-up question. Once now the white cube is handed over, and already if you see the last film, White Cube, you're like compared to Enjoy Poverty, which is very much you in the center all the time.
Yeah.
You're still there, but you become a more marginal figure during the film in a way. So now the step is it's handed over. Then, so what I mean is like it becomes where the political purpose becomes so clear. Also, then the provocation. I mean, latest when they run the white cube. Now you could say it's still you and you're still. But at a certain moment, this provocation will cease, I guess, because then it's their project,
probably.
and so it becomes a political project.
Yeah, I guess so. I think the film White Cube is very much like Enjoy Poverty was a portrait of a certain status quo. I mean, I'm a real person. I really work with other people. They really make those sculptures. They really buy back the land. The White Cube is really being built. They are really on the cover of the New York Times. This is all real. But it's also a story, a portrait of what the worlds want from critical art now. It's like Soros Foundation, basically. We are doing Soros type of stuff and making a film about it. And to some degree, to the nth degree, actually, building literally an OMA-designed white cube on a plantation is a portrait, kind of, to some degree also, hilarious portrait of that status quo. Now, indeed, yes, the white cube, there was a ceremony yesterday in Lusanga, and yeah, I'm no longer part of it. I can be called if people need my advice or help, but in a way, the white cube now has to simply ask for forgiveness to the people, and that's going to be the next step.
About the truth, Florian, No, I don't answer about ambivalence. I will answer about the thing of the truth, no? Yes, maybe it was not clear, no? But my problem also with this is that it seems now that all the museums claim the same, you know? For this, I put the truth, you know? And for me, this is a problem because always is with very good intentions, no? Decolonization, inclusion, no? But where are the consequences of all of that, no?
And what does it hide?
Yes, totally.
I am completely in favor of decolonization, 100%. But what does it hide? Mm-hmm. A lot.
A lot.
Yes.
No, and you have points also. You talk about that, and you use these words, you know. No, you, any people in that world, no. But it's very. For me, it's very problematic because the consequences of all of that, the actions of that, no, is not only a discourse. It's like it's estético solo. Estético. You know aesthetic? Estético, no? It's like only, yes, formal. The speech becomes formal if nothing more happens, no?
I think the urge to quote-unquote decolonize is very real. I don't think it should be discredited. Of course, there are, at least 6 billion people in the globe who really want and need that, for sure. So it should not be discredited, or I'm really in favor of it. But I think sometimes, and maybe that's what you point at, sometimes it is used to hide the power structures behind it, and only on a certain level the decolonization takes place, and in many other ways it is meant to keep the systems of production in the hands of very powerful institutions and individuals. Anyway.
No, obviously, I try to say that is how the museums or the discourse use the use that we do of these words, no? Obviously, not the action of decolonize, but the same with a lot of feminist speech in the museums. But then, when you see what happened inside in the structure, there are two different things, you know.
So you would like to go much further. You would like to be more feminist. You would want the structures to become more feminist. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, me too.
More feminist, more decolonized, more all these words that they use always.
Yeah,
but
so it's about the means of production. It's not
yes,
about.
Yes, I'm totally
it's not
agree.
about
This
the
is
art.
the point.
It's about.
You say that.
It's basically where the money is.
Yes.
That's what it is. Yeah.
I mean, part of the provocation in your earlier works, no less or not so much anymore, but in your work also is like the question of how you, when you see it, how do you deal with the people that you involve? Mm-hmm. So in Joy Poverty, it's very clear. Like the first question is there, like, what do these people know what they get into? But it's also when with the man you married,
yes.
Who then went to Spain, had a full story, and so or when you get ex-incarcerated people to guard the shows, they are objects of your performance in a way. So how do you deal with the ambivalence towards the people involved in your, or how much ambivalence is there with the people you involve in your project that are not the audience in a way, but collaborate
with the people? Okay.
Are they, and how much do they know about their collaboration?
Okay. I don't understand like the people who work with me as a collaborators. I try to understand, and I try that will be complices in order that different points. The first of all is to explain that it's an artistic production for these museums. The money that I will earn in this project, the money that they will earn, or what they will earn. Also my political thoughts that I'm putting in a game, in a project, no, in order that the other person could accept or not accept, no? This is the first point. And in all my films also, all of this that I show the friends, but I do films, the first conversation that I have with my collaborators, my accomplice, I put the camera. When I explain all of that, and this part of the film, o sea, this conversation is in the film, in the result, no? This is the thing, and also have to do with the real, no? The real that you talk about it. I think that have also something. For example, you are now said they are the objects, no, of your solo show, no? The former prisoners, no? Well, I don't know if they are the objects. Maybe you, the public, also are the objects for them, you know, because they have very clear what are they doing there and why they are doing there. For example, with the people who I work with, they were in the jail and they were in a second degree. Second degree means that you cannot go out, no? Through the contracts that our institutions give to them, to the prison, these people could pass to third degree and go out to the prison, no? Go out and work. So they benefit, no? Also they money every month, 6 months. So I think the key point is that the other people be very clear, my collaborator, or the people who I propose, to explain all the questions, and then the other person decide, no? But when I talk about accomplish, is because for me it's very important that the collaborator have a causa, have a motive, have a desire to do that for some reason. Maybe it's not the same reason than me, but this should be very clear. If not, that work not works. No.
And I think that's interesting that both of you work, because sometimes you're put in I also did this in a group with like Artur Żmijewski, Santiago Sierra, and some artists that work also very heavily with ambivalence and provocation. But I think two interesting points, I think, is that both of you look for a direct improvement of the people you work with, if it is the working permit or the passport, yes, or so, and then Renzo, you explained it in your case. And the other is that you make yourself vulnerable. I mean, you're in situations that are also not where you're in the middle of it. You're not a distant observer in it. And I think these are two crucial points for the kind of provocations that you have in your work.
I always try to be part of the problem. If not, no, yes, part of the problem in the art work, you know, because if not, it's a bad start, you know.
We don't exist outside those circles of violence. It is indeed very moral to say that you are part of the problem. Yeah. There is no position outside of the problem.
Moral is bad.
Sorry?
Moral is bad.
Well, or it's bad or whatever. But I mean, she says she's part of the problem. She wants to be part of the problem. That resonates with me. If you would ask me the same question, like, do people, are people aware of the position I put them in? I would never again make a film like Enjoy Poverty. I made it once. I will never make a film like that again. Nevertheless, I think it's a very accurate film. I think it depicts very accurately the complete lack of agency that very many people on the globe have. It's a liberal dream that everybody has equal chances, and if only we do some this and that little, actions in a museum in Berlin, for example, then we will, be equal and we can have equal agency in our exchanges. This is a lie. It is a lie. Most people on the planet have so little agency economically, are paid so little, or have their land stolen, or if they protest, they get a bullet through their head, etc., etc. It's not something of the past, it's something now. All the people on these plantations that I personally know, I talk about them a lot, many of them are in debt bondage. They can't leave their job. They're bound to the land and to the company. So what agency do they have? Very, very little. So it will take somebody like me who makes himself part of that problem of inequality to exhibit how big it is. If you leave it to Unilever, they will, hire some photographer and find some pretty boys and girls, and they'll all be happy, and they'll make a commercial about it. It's not true, right? So it takes somebody like me, could be somebody else, takes in this case somebody like me, to exhibit how terribly unequal the relationships are. So a film like Enjoy Poverty simply tries to portray that. Now, you could say that this is beyond the right of being portrayed. It's so evil, you are not allowed to portray it. That is a certain position one could take, but I don't agree with it. Because the most of the benefit of not portraying it will go to Western audiences who then are not obliged to look at it. I think if the biggest problem of people on plantations or in war zones is that they are filmed in a film that they will never see, and the filmmaker tells them that they will never see it, which is the truth, because they don't have a TV, they don't have electricity, they don't have, they will probably never have a smartphone in their lives. If I tell that truth, I think that's extremely useful for whomever sees the film, and for the people who don't see the film, that's the least of their problems. The bigger problem is that there is no food, and that is not, that is not something that I created. On the contrary, I try to resolve that.
But it's interesting that a certain kind of provocation that Enjoy Poverty has, that some of your works have, but also that work of Santiago Sierra or Zmewski have, they are functioning. I mean, I'm like showing Enjoy Poverty in workshops or in seminars. You could have hours of discussions. I mean, people were so upset and then started arguing it. So with all that, why maybe one would not do the film like this anymore, and good reasons for that. It's also, there's also something in it that has a disturbance, and I think that's maybe in the core of the navigation right now. Is that okay? And how otherwise to still have an impact if you avoid this kind of ambivalence. But maybe we can also open it if you have comments and questions already. You're not very provoked.
You have two really kind artists, a really nice curator. We're all
too
happy.
Nice. Nobody is provoked.
We love you. You love us.
Well,
But
I come
I
back
think
to you.
The moment has shifted also. Like, it's not only that I would that the discourse has shifted. It's also that I even, like 1 year after it came out, I decided I could never ever do a film like that again. Just for my own heart, basically. Being the perpetrator, being the agent, positioning myself as an agent of that violence, I could not put myself through that twice. But I'm very happy that I did it once. Yeah.
But it's interesting. But you also continued as the persona you were in the film. You also kind of brought into lectures and conversations to a degree. I would say, like there was an there was an ambivalence. Who is this persona? And you also had you had heavy critique. I mean, you were also considered a right-wing artist, and so it also was had a cost on that side.
Sure.
I think.
I disagree with her. I think Enjoy Poverty is a Marxist film. It talks about a means of production. Who has the agency to make films? It's a Marxist analysis of what contemporary art does to impoverished people. I think some of the people who claim I'm a right-wing artist are maybe themselves a tiny bit right-wing.
I think it's also partly because the provocation next to the question of how the people are treated is that you, in a way, offered a neoliberal model of gentrification as something that brings something good, which
Sure.
is an interesting thought. Because but of course that so maybe you were more considered a neoliberal than a right-wing artist in this regard.
Yeah, sure. I just want to be a truth teller, really. Again, I gave the example of Martha Rosser, but it goes for all of us. You know, if we're lucky, we get to exhibit our work in state-sponsored or private museums and galleries. and we all flock to the places where people will fund us, and the funding comes with a price. The funding or the acquisitions of work comes from cities or real estate agents or private people who, maybe for very good reasons, I'm not critiquing them, but they want to acquire cultural capital to justify other types of capital. So artists, I mean, this is kind of a cliche by now, but when I started the reverse gentrification program in 2012, even then it was very well known that artists, including left-wing critical artists, are the stormtroopers of gentrification. Not just right-wing artists, equally left-wing artists. So I want to simply use the world and explain the world the way it is. If the biggest impact of critical art is that there is a cappuccino bar opening, okay, then we should make sure that the cappuccino bar can also open on the plantations where they actually pick the coffee for that cappuccino bar. It's easy, yeah.
And Núria, would you also like between your works in Cuba and the earlier projects like 15 years ago or whatever, did your position towards provocation and relation to audience and participants change in this time, would you say, and how would you describe it?
Change the relation with my collaborators. Now that I explained you before, did change. For different fight projects, no? For different fight projects, in really. But not about provocation. Not change. Change the relation with my collaborations. That in some, it's a strange, no? That sound. When all that I explain you now, that is important for me to that the other have some reason to do their work, you know, not only material but also, no, did change during that time. This is what changed, but not my relation with provocation. But with the public, maybe yes, also, because this thing that say always that all the there are, well, I don't know, some works that I show in Europe, for example, that works that I did in Latin America, but I show in Europe. Always in the public, a lot of people are victimizing the people who I work with. But I show the same work in Latin America or in Mexico where I did the work, and they don't receive the project like that, you know? So maybe the provocation, maybe I use the provocation more. I hide the volume of the provocation in some moments in Europe for this reason. I don't explain Ben. For this reason, I wanted to say that to do more clear, ¿Alguien en español en la sala? Venga. Para que se vea más, o sea, a veces subo el volumen de la provocación para que se vea.
If English is possible.
English, ¿no?
Argumentiert sie sozusagen, die Provokation macht sie stärker. A veces argumentas la provocación.
Sí, subo el volumen de la provocación aquí para que se haga más evidente.
Damit es sozusagen offensichtlicher ist.
Que hay mucho de lo que leemos que está en nuestra mirada.
Weil vieles, was wir wahrnehmen, was wir rauslesen, aus unserem Blickwinkel auskommt.
O en la mirada del público.
Oder der Blick des Publikums, der Allgemeinheit.
Cuando yo enseño el mismo proyecto en México y en Holanda, por ejemplo, o en España no?
Wenn ich sozusagen ein Projekt in Mexiko oder in Holland oder Spanien habe, also das gleiche Projekt.
Y el público europeo tiene muchas ganas de ver el otro como víctima.
Und das deutsche Publikum hat große Lust sozusagen, tiene muchas ganas ver.
No, que todo el discurso es como victimizando al otro, como
Dass
si yo
sozusagen man
usara
immer
al otro.
Opfer sucht, dass man sozusagen so eine Hierarchie, se ve una jerarquía que se victimizando están, sozusagen, dass man Opfer sieht.
In a way that partly the gaze of the audience turns the participants into victims because it was
Yes,
victims.
the gaze of, yes, because how can be the same project, exactly the same. I did the project in Mexico, I show in Mexico in different contexts, debates. I go to Europe, I show the same. There are something in the gaze also, that this is the responsibility of each one of us, you know?
But that's also interesting because, in a way, I guess, since we're here, a lot of you also, or maybe rather from a theater, dance, performance context, as I am also, like where it's very clear that provocation also would have to be very time-specific in a way. That's also what we talk about. Also, that what works in a time it's something might not work 2 years later anymore. But also context, site-specific in a way. And your films, of course, are shown everywhere and also probably have different perspectives in that regard. So it would be interesting also. Yeah, I guess that's an interesting aspect also.
Yes.
Now?
Hi. If you're willing to share, I would like to know what you're working on right now. Take your time.
With
Get a wine, come back.
I want a wine. No, I'm working with different projects. I'm trying to rethink what is the function of the public art, no, and monuments and all of this. So I'm doing I'm creating like a kind of tax haven company, like a monument for a town, you know, in order that all the people of the town can use. Rethinking the public art, you know? Exactly. This is one of the works that I'm...
So you're making a tax-free or like a tax haven company, but that individual citizens can be part of it.
Yes, and can use it.
That's
it's
a
like
very good idea.
It's a public art for this context specific, because a lot of things happen with the taxes in this context.
Yeah. We have, many of our biggest companies hardly pay taxes.
Exactly.
Because they have structures. What if you would use the same structures then none of us would pay tax, and then they would have to tax those companies higher also.
Exactly.
It's a very good idea.
Exactly. And in this place there are a mine. So you can imagine what happened in this town, no? For that I do this public, no? But also I'm rethinking which is the role of the public art now, no? And for example, this is one option in my mind, no? This is one thing that I'm working with, and I'm in 4 or 5 projects, so a little bit crazy. I can explain, but maybe Renzo wants to explain something.
No, maybe you have another very good idea. This is a brilliant idea. Yeah.
No.
But it's interesting that in terms of specificity, when you work, since you often work with legal issues and bureaucracy, that of course is different. Like how to get a nationality in Spain is different from how to get a nationality in Germany, and how to get a tax exemption status is different. And so how to get people out of prison to work these all. There's a site specificity in the project, and
Totally.
this definitely.
Totally. And the laws, no, in Gothenburg, when I work with Joanna and Lume, no, and Maria, bueno, the laws are different in every country, and we should do another strategy to find the same point, no? For example, but I'm totally on what you said, that the production means
Yeah.
that this is what well, I'm interested in, when the artist can do this distribution, no, redistribution.
Yeah. Yeah. So I work on the same. So this Congolese Plantation Workers Art League, they are very good, great artists also. So now I have more of a, I'm more like a supporting agency or something. They are trying to get back all the means of production. So the restitution is not just about old stolen objects. Of course they should go back too. But it's also about land, it's about capital, and there are ways to do it. They need to be figured out. And you need to build alliances across ethnicity, country, continent, class, race, in order to do it. Big companies also use the very best lawyers and the very poorest workers, bring them together, that's how they make profit. If you want to counter that, you will also need very good lawyers, for example, and you will also need this and you will also need that, so that those workers get the means of production back. So the idea that it can be only indigenous people who fight back on their own against the structures of and the powers of capital, it's going to be very, very hard if you make $20 a month. Of course, they should lead the efforts. I agree with that completely. But it's, yeah, if you want to make any dent into getting back means of production, then you need strong alliances. And yeah, and you need people who want to work for that, and I want to work for that.
Because it makes me think, because you talked, for example, about your accomplices, and because you said all the legal question for the both of you, maybe in your team of work, do you have a lawyer, a psychologist, I don't know, what is the team of collaborators on that level that you, because doing the concert, of course, is one thing, but yeah, I would be curious about your team of collaboration on all that.
In all the projects that I do, or I did, I work with lawyers, no? I work with lawyers. Depend on the theme of the research, I change the lawyer, no? Migration lawyer or fiscal lawyer, or depend, no? I work with 4 or 5 lawyers, and depend. But I pay these lawyers, you know. It's not from my team. My team, I am my team, you know. These lawyers I paid. I paid my psychoanalyst also. That is from the. It's like important in the team, but it's not in the team. Well.
And the psychoanalyst for you?
Or for me.
For the whole team?
No, for me, for the project.
Okay.
No. More or less this, no? My team is lawyers, the psychoanalysts, and designers sometimes. This was the question? Okay.
So I'm part now of a supporting office. We support CATPC in their efforts to get their land back, to get the forest back, to get art that was looted back, to get capital back, to get visibility back. Yeah, so and we have a board. There's a lawyer in the board, and there's even a hair of one of those big companies in the board, so we can use the family secrets. Yeah, we need to turn power against itself somehow. And many people, even many people with power, are very interested in that. Because they feel it's wrong to have so much power. They know it's not right. And maybe in the past I just wanted to exhibit as harshly as I could how unequal and how unjust it was. using myself as the vehicle, as the person who personifies that white privilege. That's a word that didn't exist yet at the time, but that's what you would call it now, to exhibit it. And now I'm kind of tired of exhibiting it. I want to restitute everything. Yeah.
Because, like, you talk a lot about the means of production and how to redistribute, and you just said you have actually, like, how to find alliances with this, because, I don't know, at the start, I was thinking also when you said all the art field, even the most alternative, inclusive, little structure that is not institutional is fucked up because it's somehow living from these means. So, but do you, I don't know, do you have still some selection of, like, with who do you don't want to collaborate, or with which money do you don't want, you know, like, which money do you say this I still take and I redistribute, and which I say I just don't want to have to do with it? Or I don't know, what is your link to these means actually that are around?
Yeah, I don't think that every little art structure is quote unquote fucked up. I think and I'm happy that something like Tate Modern exists. I'm happy it exists. I think it just doesn't go nearly as far as it should go. Given the fact that it's been built with money from plantations, it's not good enough to simply have shows now of people who are descendants of enslaved people, and have beautiful shows about how that should be done differently in London. To me, it seems that the same circles that benefited from colonialism are now maybe the ones benefiting from decolonizing, and that's not good enough. So I think it should go much further in that way. So to build a white cube on a plantation, and OMA designed it, so it's like one of those big, you know, multinational, if you will, architecture firms that has been building white cubes for many different types of regimes, in the Middle East, in China, in the Americas, in Europe, I don't think in Africa so much. Anyway, so yeah, at the time I thought, when we did that 2017, the repatriation of the white cube, I thought it was important to work with a company like OMA, and not with, of course there are fantastic Congolese architects, and there are building styles that are very different from a modernist white cube, of course. But I thought it's good to use the exact same thing as what is used elsewhere. Because the decolonization should not be about the token, it should be about the means of production again. If a white cube is more effective than another structure in bamboo for getting back means of production, then the white cube is a better choice, is what I thought at the time. Now, to come back to your question, there's definitely, like, if Unilever wanted to give $1 million, I would say no, you can't. Less than 5 billion is not enough. Yeah, you can simply calculate the money that they took away by not paying people a decent wage, and if it's in the billions. So anything less than that is not enough. Yeah.
I have actually just a question of understanding. What's inside the white cube?
Well, since it's not my white cube, I have little. I can only do some hearsay, you know. It's not my white cube, but it's used daily as a studio for art making. Sometimes there are goats in it and motorcycles. Sometimes there are exhibitions. Sometimes it's a school. Sometimes people live there. And there are a few exhibitions that happened. Ibrahim Mahama, the Ghanaian sculptor, did an exhibition in it. They are starting to build up a collection. They have requested sculptures that are now in the hands of museums in the United States, sculptures that were made to protect against that, to protect the people from the plantation system, like talisman type of sculptures, power objects, I think the term is. They want them back because they need them. They were part of the resistance against the plantation system, but even those sculptures are not there anymore. They were taken away. So they need to come back. There are many projects around the White Cube, but the important thing is that it's not what is inside of it, but what is outside of it. What is outside of it is the most important.
Yeah, I was just asking myself, is it kind of like a symbol, or is it filled with something? I'm totally happy if it's filled with living and whatever.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, because I didn't understand before, to be honest, so I just wanted to...
I think to a large degree it stands there being a white cube, but it's a white cube that is being trialed by the community. There's like a trial against the white cube that is currently happening, and it seems that the white cube is going to be convicted for community service, to also make sure that the care and the repair and the healing can happen on the plantation. So what it produces is land being bought back and being replanted with forests.
But it reproduces it produces it with the sculptures that were sold in New York.
Yeah.
And that's kind of still going on, or it's
not
it's
just
one...
that. It's kind of an interesting token, the fact that it stands there. I think the project would not get nearly the attention that it has if it wasn't for the provocation of there being a white cube. That's why it was on the cover of the New York Times. That's why we can fundraise for land to be they buy the land, CATPC buys the land, but then you need $2,000 per hectare to plant trees. $2,000 is a lot of money if you make $20 per month that you will need to feed your kids.
You know, I think it's super clever, you know, to be able to buy land back, also not with kind of, help me people, spenden or donations or whatever, you know, with people coming who profited from the system and giving it like gracefully away, but with people doing something and selling it and getting more money than with their daily job. Yeah. I think that's super clever, because that's a way of giving, power to people who were totally powerless. But do you think it's would work as a franchise, or it's just a one provocation thing? Because probably if you build it in another plantage, you won't come. They will not come back on the cover of the New York Times again.
Yeah, so first of all, people, I don't see them as powerless at all. The very fact that they survive is a huge defeat of all odds, given the circumstances. You know, I would challenge any of us to live off $20 per month. Even in Congo, it's not going to happen. Yeah, it's not going to happen. And so, yeah, it's definitely the goal is definitely to make it much bigger in the next few years. Yeah. When I speak about those billions that Unilever should pay back, they really should. They really should. And they can. They make $6 billion profit per year. It's just 1 year of profit. It's nothing. So, yeah, that should happen. And it should happen to those communities. The one problem is if you would give it to the UN or to the other structures, it's going to disappear. Yeah. So It's not just about forcing or shaming or cajoling. Via art, the only thing I can do is art. Via art, those companies into paying up. It's also about how the redistribution works. So there's a lot to be figured out. Yeah. But yeah, it needs to grow, for sure.
Maybe just to mention for the people in the live stream or later in the podcast, that's why Núria is not speaking anymore. That she had to go out for a moment with a coughing fit, not just to explain why it became a little bit a single conversation. But I don't know if there's maybe a last urgent comment or question.
May I perhaps at the end provoke you with a question? First, I have to claim that I'm really a fan of all of you and also of your work. But listening now to you and just moving my thoughts, I ask you, are you sacrificing you and your art? And who do you want to redeem?
Yeah, we're gonna make a film about a sacrifice. Yeah, we're one of the many things that we're doing is making a film about, you know, the Pasolini film, The Gospel According to Matthew, no? And this is a too long story. I'll do that story when the film comes out. Yeah, am I sacrificing my art? No, I think building a white cube, I think it's a brilliant piece. So I didn't sacrifice anything. And I was really deeply shocked, like on a very deep level, when I first encountered the complete desperation on those plantations. And I made a certain type of film at the time, Enjoy Poverty. And it's true that the last 10 years I've been trying with ups and downs to kind of work my way through it, like what can be done. I first of all decided immediately I will never make a film like that again, because it would kill me. So no, I'm not sacrificing myself, I'm trying to heal also myself. Yeah.
That's very contemporary last words, I would say. I find it interesting also, just realized a bit during the conversation, and also in response to what Núria was saying, that maybe one of the biggest provocations at the moment, at least in Germany, in the theater, seems to be actually the fear of wokeness. So that there is no provocation seems to be a big provocation. So there's a lot of debates in the feuilletons about is the theater to woke, is it all about morals and so on. So and in a way, I guess we all here would be, even you, Núria, would be on that side of wokeness in this view. So maybe with a different audience already, this would have been a provocation, what we talked about. So that's maybe interesting that there is actually, at least in the feuilletons, I don't know, but also in the society about certain things. I mean, nobody is as provoked as about gendered language or whatever. So there seems to be a lot of provocation going on these fields, which we didn't touch upon, and it's maybe interesting that they are still often related to the cultural sector and art, but maybe not so much within the art scene. That would be maybe something to continue about now with a glass of wine or another time. But for now, I would thank you very much for being here and sharing and talking about your projects, and thank you very much for coming, and hope to see you again.
Thank you.